Hello and welcome to my Tuesday Night Live painting demo. Sorry for the little bit of delay. I had a few technical challenges, but welcome. I am gonna jump right into this painting. It is this one is a commission. It's of a young woman named Marianne or Maryanna, and um, that great. I've done a little bit of retouching on it to help improve it a little bit. And so I'm just going to get right into the drawing here. If you can, let me know where you're watching from if you feel comfortable with that. Um, and if you have any technical questions too, I'm more than happy to answer those while I'm painting. Just getting in some of the landmarks here. Sometimes I'll just do some rough lines and then I'll check my measurements. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'd like to eyeball it at first just to get an idea, good practice of where I think things are, and then I do a little bit of measuring, and usually I'm off by quite a bit, but it's good practice anyway. So things like the chin from the bottom of the panel, I can measure, and that's pretty close. Don't really see your cheek there, but I can guess about where it is. And her other cheek is here. See, that's a bit more over. And then eyebrow. Her head is tilted slightly. I want to make sure that these axis lines are parallel to each other. Let's just get the eyebrow. I'm sure mine is pretty far off. Yep, it's where that is. Comes all the way over to there. So then I know where the nose is. Okay. And I'm looking for the base of the nose. It's right about here. And I'm going to just put a little bit of red into the my sketching paint, I guess I can call it. It's not really anything but just sort of drawing in the information, but it's good if it matches closely to the color that it's eventually going to end up in that area. That way I don't have to work so hard to overcome a completely different color from the sketch. And she has this tension in her mouth that I want to make sure that I get. Um, she has this broad smile that's pulling across the her pulling against her cheeks, and so there's tension here, and that's then pulling it back down across down her chin. So it is creating sort of this diamond shape here. So I want to make sure that I get that feeling of that pull in her expression. And then tip of her nose. And then there is a faint shadow here comes up over the from the brim of the hat, and then the light is coming from the left side and from above. So we get this cast shadow underneath her nose. Her up. Okay, I'm gonna have to do a little more measuring here. So from the top, base of the nose, over. So I'm going to go a little bit darker here just so I can get a good description of the underside of her nose here. Okay. Okay, Marianne says, awesome how you measure. Um, yeah, so just so you know, I'm working to scale my reference on the computer monitor is to scale to my panel, so I can just easily measure one to one. Um, if you're not working to scale, then you have to do relative sizes. So, like you would say, oh, okay, well, the the distance from the nose to between the eyebrows and between the eyebrows to the hat is the same. So then you'd have to measure each part on your panel. I don't have to do that here because I can just measure directly, which would so that just would be a whole other exercise. Let's get a little bit more orange going here. My colors have started to get a little crusty. It would have been helpful if I pulled the skin off the dabs of paint first, but that's okay. I can work through that. Getting a little bit of yellow in the mix here. And my medium, which I'm running out of, I may have to add a little bit more, is Gamsol is my thinner of sapphire more and more. It gives the paint a little more flow. My surface is gessoed hardboard that I've put another layer of gesso on, and it tends to be very dry, soaks up the paint very quickly, and so it's good to have to add a little bit more oil, and then it just really does help it flow much more. So you hear how scratchy that is, and then if I add a little bit more, it's not quite. Need to get a little more blue in her chin there, and need to check some of those measurements. Let's just get a little bit lighter here so that I can get that to read. Okay, I'm going to switch just to a bigger brush. Sometimes I worry that I tighten up too much and that sort of affects the calligraphic quality of the paint. Um, so this is a probably number 12 flat. It's a nice big one. So that just helps me loosen up quite a bit. And I can also cover quite a bit of ground quickly. Let's get that sense of shadow that falls over the bridge of the nose, and I want to get a measurement of that. That looks pretty good. And just measure again from the edge of the nose. I get kind of a brownish reddish color coming in. So there isn't a whole lot of color shift between the shadow side of the face and the light side of the face, but I do want to exaggerate it a little bit. So I'm going to push the shadow side a little bit warmer, meaning incorporating a little more oranges and kind of browns, reds in the shadow. And then I'm going to push the lights a little more blue violet as a complement color. And that would make sense from a lighting perspective. When you have a cool light, then the shadows will be warmer. When you have a warm light, the shadows will be cooler. So in this case, I'm going for a cool light, a warm shadow. She has a nice fresh pink color in her cheeks and across her nose. And so we don't won't really get those red rosy colors until it moves out of the direct light. Um, so these specular highlights will be more bluish um, and violet. I'm only going to get those to read though if I have some of the warmer colors right against it. Okay, let me get a new paper towel. I go through about a roll of Bounty a week here, just wiping my brushes off as I work. Okay, let's see if still I have my own um, feed up. My feed. I have my own monitor up, watching the broadcast at the same time to make sure that I don't it doesn't stall. It looks like it's still good. I've had problems in the past with my internet service, and so sometimes it will just freeze up right in the middle. And I, sorry, just as I was saying that my service often freezes and that I need to check it, then it froze. Um, so good thing I was paying attention because that was only about 30 seconds, I think. Anyway, so I said, Joy, hi, and welcome. Um, okay, so we're going close to black here in the shadow. I just need a little bit of this safflower oil in the mixture to get it to come off the brush easily. So that's the underside of the hat. Let's get a measurement. So I need to come up a little bit higher here. And then her hair is, I really say, kind of straw colored in this photo, which is just a little bit of yellow and a grayish mixture. I think just a touch of yellow, so something, yeah, so I'm close to it. But then it kind of goes, it's going to get warmer in the shadows because of our lighting. So I want it to go kind of a little bit brown. There is a little bit of greens in there somewhere, and that's when there's going to be a little bit of black mixed with that yellow. We'll get kind of that green influence. But I have to be careful it doesn't go too green on me. Okay, at some point I'm going to have to figure out where her eyes are. So let's start by measuring. The top of her eye is going to be, helps if I get a little bit of, and the corner of the eye is right about there. So that gives me the placement of one eye. That looks too high. So something is off in my drawing, so I need to check a few things before. And I know I usually make the base of the nose too low in relationship to the eye. So I can kind of see that it's looking a little bit low there. So something like that, I think. Hopefully it's not that far off because then I'll have to redraw a bunch of things. So let's measure for the eye again. And yeah, so I'm making the eye a little bit too high too. It's going to be easier to bring that down considering that I have everything else kind of in place and measured. And it's looking like she has kind of a bluish eye color. I think in the other photo that we were considering using, I could see her eye colors was blue. So even though it's mostly in shadow here, I am seeing a touch of blue in the photo. It's not going to be as blue as I painted it right there, but I want to make sure I want to keep that eye from creeping up on me. See, that's the original line that I put. So let's measure again. Top of the eye. It's about there. Okay, so that's not too far off. And then I want to get the other eye in, so based on the angles here, The other eye is going to be in that same line and in shadow. There's not a whole lot of information there in the photo, but I do want to make sure that I'm respecting the underlying anatomy that's there. So I don't want to put anything in that's going to be jarring, that doesn't read right. So just have to pay a little bit of attention to it as I put in things like hair and other things around it. Okay, so wanted to define her jawline a little bit, so I need to put in a little bit of dark there. And then later I can work back and forth and decide how hard or soft I want that edge. And then there's a little bit of the warmth coming in her neck. Not a lot of color, so I can gray it up a little bit. Okay, got a little bit too light, I think. Oh, that's not too bad. So a little more orange to that mixture. That's kind of nice. Then it goes darker on the edges here, and then almost to black. Okay, and give her back a little bit of jaw that I just obliterated. Okay, and then I said that highlight, let me get a nice clean brush here to indicate where that is. It's going to have a touch of ultramarine maybe, or a little bit of purple. That's going to be that. So this is going to be my lightest light on the cheek, and I have to move it a couple steps down in value so that we can start to see the color in it. And then I want a little bit of the cheek color, way too dark, the cheek color around that so that I can start to read that highlight. Has to go a little bit darker. So this is giving me a little bit of value reference so I know how dark I have to go with things around it. Let's get some of the black that we're seeing in the edges of the eye. It's either from eyeliner or her eyelashes. And then there's a little bit of darker red in the what do you call it? In the, I want to say the eye socket, but that's not right. In the brow area covering the eye, it just drops back and goes a little bit darker. Okay, I'm running out of words sometimes. Then here's that shadow line coming in again, helping us to define the form. There's a lot of orange in that, so I want to pump up a little bit of that color there. I'm just feeling like her mouth is a little bit too low. If I have her nose up here, let's get a little bit of that alizarin permanent that into the nostrils. Don't always want to go black there, although I'm going to put in a touch right there. Okay, and then got the shadow underneath her nose, which is, again, if you remember, warm shadow, cool light, so that we have some violets coming in on her upper lip. And then I can almost go pure white here. And then I do want to redraw her upper lip here. It just doesn't feel like it's in the right place yet. And I'm going to put in the separation of her lip. Okay, that's feeling a little bit better. And her The area underneath her lip is flattening out a little bit. Normally you get a pretty strong shadow there, but because the pull of her mouth, I just change the shape of it a little bit. Because the pull of her mouth, that's flattening that area out. So if I want to be able to capture her expression, I want to pay attention to that part of the expression. Okay. Then let's pull that light area over a little. And then part of that tension there is a dimple that's up here. Gotta go a little bit grayer in that. Another dimple here. And then we have the side of her face that's facing away from us. Has a lot more orange and yellow in it. Okay, that's getting it. Let's fix that. Then I want to get the underside of her nose a little bit more pronounced here. And then she has a similar highlight on the tip of her nose to her cheek. Again, just adding a little bit of violet or blue to the white. It's more like I'm adding white to blue, so I have to really get a lot more white going there. So something like that, and then similar to the bridge of her nose there. Let's get a little darker in the corner of her mouth. Pull it up a little bit higher. This I can measure again. How did I get this smaller brush? Guess I wasn't paying attention. So the corner of the mouth has definitely got to be higher than what I have it, which means the whole mouth is probably a little bit higher. Let's see, this comes straight across, has this dip in the lip here, and then down. Then we go to a darker red here. Okay, that doesn't look too far off there. And lip comes straight down and then across. Okay. No, we're not. It feels a little bit off, but it's not terribly off. So it's something I can correct a little bit as we go. Then I do want to get, so now the highlight on the lips is not going to be exactly the same color as the on the cheek because it has all that red influence in it. So it's going to be, you're going to see a little bit of the lip color off of and the reflection at the same time, so it's going to make it a little bit pinker. Okay, want to keep that red very warm in her lips. Even though it's in the full light, the color of her lips are very warm. Either it's lipstick or it's her natural color, but really can't tell too much from this photo. But I would venture to guess that she has a little bit of lipstick on. And let's get a little bit of highlight going here on the chin. I need to go a little bit darker around it so you see it. Okay. So I have her neck, the part of her neck that's in shadow. What I don't have is really cool area of her neck that's in light. It's got a lot of violets in it. And Let's get a little bit of the black or grayer colors that are in her eye so it doesn't look like it's this glowing blue. And the white of her eyes are much darker than what I have them painted. And there's a lot of turquoise and blues in the white. Not to go too far, but it does have to go darker to start to feel right. Okay, and I think I need to thin her nose out a little bit. I have the highlight over a little bit too far, and it's making her nose feel very thick. Just throwing a bunch of colors here, trying to get a warm neutral here for the corner of the eye. That's actually pretty close to the eyebrow color. If I can throw some orange and greens in there and black, I can get that eyebrow color there going. Yep, something like that. Then I'm looking for the color of her hair in the shadow, which is all kinds of colors, but it's mostly grays, warm grays. Okay, and let's see if we can fill in the rest of this light area here that sometimes the panel color can be distracting, especially if you're working in shadows, because then you don't really can't really judge the right values until you have that white, stark white covered up, and then you can start to see things. And then I also, with the color of her hat, I need to mix kind of a general color for that and start to block it in, because that's going to help me see things too a lot quicker. Sorry about all the banging there. Let's see if I can drop this down a little bit. It's banging against something. Sometimes my setup is gets a little bit shaky if everything isn't tightened properly. Okay, so I was working on her hat color. Lots of orange, a little bit of pink, some black, throw in a little bit of white. Okay. And I made that too thin. So, got to get a little more paint in there. Okay, well that's too gray. Okay, so let's get more paint going. Okay, that's not too bad. Can adjust it a little bit later. Just needed kind of get the general color and direction going here to move things along. Comes off the edge here, and we got her hair. Okay, she has this shock of much lighter hair coming out right at the spot. Has to go much lighter. So that's helping me figure out where it is. And then she has some of her hair coming out over her eye and her cheek. Paint the negative shape in there. That's going to help me. Something that. Get a little bit of the blue of her collar here. Something like that. Okay, I'm starting to see it slowly. Okay, so I'm going to keep on going. We're about a half hour in. Just have the whole thing blocked in, adding some of the color, getting the feeling of the hair. Getting some of that orange, dark orange color that's coming in the top here. Got a little bit too much white in the paint there, so I'm going to have to come back in with some a little bit cleaner colors. See how dry that is? So I want to add a little bit more of the oil, the safflower oil, to keep that nice and flowing. Okay. Get a little more orange in there. I do see some greens and blues coming in, a couple spots. So just kind of keep those colors mixing in. Let's see if this is too yellow. So I got some mixture here that's close to just yellow and white. Okay, and I've lost some of the pink in her cheeks here, especially in the shadow. As it moves into shadow, it gets much redder. Same here. Okay. And then we got a little bit of an edge here to her chin where it turns slowly into the shadow. So we want to make sure that we control that, how soft and hard that edge is, so we really feel it turn. Okay. Starting to see it here. Then we got a little bit of stronger color right here. And then I lost the light that's right above her brow, that light area of the face. I came in a little bit too strong with the shadow, so I have to work to get that back. Something like that. Okay. But overall, because I have enough darks and lights, there is an overall feeling of light on her face. Some people don't wonder how to get that sense of light, and sometimes you can only get it by having the right value structure and having enough contrast between the lights and darks before you start to feel it. This gets lighter on this side of the underside of the brim. And then she's against a sort of a stucco wall or something like that. Let me just clean up some of this area on my palette. Sorry for those who um, don't like scraping noises. So that background, I'm going to push it a little bit darker and a little bit bluer, and that will help bring her face forward a bit. Um, well, this is my titanium white, but I think for this I need more of my radiant white, which is it's like titanium white, but it uses safflower oil as the binder instead of linseed oil. So that tends to make it feel brighter and cooler. And so if I'm going to mix it with blue and I want to maintain a lot of the color in the blue, then I this is the radiant white's a much better bet. And that's if I'm right, I think Gamblin when they mix the cooler colors tends to use safflower oil instead of the linseed oil to keep it from having too yellow an influence in it to keep the strength. I could be wrong there. I can check later. Or if I can dig out a tube and look, let's see if I can find one of my blues. Okay, so this phthalo blue has has linseed oil. Well, I was wrong about that one. Maybe the ultramarine blue will be different. The ultramarine blue has a label that I can no longer read. And especially without my glasses. I could be wrong. This could have linseed oil in it also. I do know when they mix they have a color line of colors called radiant colors, which are white mixed with high key colors, and with those they tend to use that radiant white to mix. Okay, so the background I wanted white, and let me get my bigger brush here and get it nice and clean. So the white with a touch of, I'm going to go with the ultramarine blue. This kind of gives me a purpley white, and let's get a fair amount of the safflower oil in there. So yeah, that's a nice color there. Let's clean it up a little bit. And then I want to make a little differentiation between the brim of the hat and the top part of the hat. Whatever you call that part of the hat, I don't know. Not good at hat anatomy. Um, the brim of the hat and the bowl of the hat. I don't know. Something like that. Okay. So maybe I got a little bit of color on this brush. I'm just going to wipe it out. Okay. So along the edge here, this is going to be a little bit darker. And then we have kind of a yellowish white color that comes around where the light is hitting the edge. Guess the sunlight here. Okay, so now I have a little bit more hair to block in, and a little bit of the wall color to put in here too. Just sort of painting that negative shape in between the hair and the wall we see through it. Okay, so I want to generalize her hair color as kind of being kind of a yellow neutral brownish color. Let's see, get a little more yellow, a little bit of black, a little orange there, because the black really then pushes that color very green. I feel like I want to be a little bit warmer, a little bit redder in this color here. Okay, just gonna go. Looks very red. Maybe it is that red. Yep. So, touch of black. So I'm just moving the just adding a little bit of color back and forth until I'm finding what feels like sort of that average color in there. And because it's very close to neutral, I keep on having to add little bits of random colors in there to move it in one direction or another before it feels right. If the color is stronger, then it's a lot easier to see what the underlying hue is. And I do want some variation of color in the hair too. I don't want it to look like it's just all one, like a dyed wig or something like that. It has to really feel like it's gotten natural tips of highlight from being in the sun and um, variations naturally in the hair color itself. It'll just make it feel a little more alive. And I want to go get some of the contrast going. I can put some of the darks in and then pull out some of the lights, and that should get us much closer to where we're going here. It's a little bit too much white in here, so I'm really going to have to clean that up a bit to get a nice, um, to get a little bit richer darks going. Okay, and to do that, I need to put a lot more black on my palette that doesn't have any white around it. Okay, so got to work to keep those darks nice and dark and transparent, trying to keep the white away from it. All my all my darks on my palette are transparent darks. I don't have any earth tones, which tend to be um, opaque or semi-transparent. Even the black that I use, it's chromatic black. It's made out of phthalo emerald and quinacridone red, which are both very strong, transparent, highly transparent colors. So adding them together will give you a transparent neutral, which is how Gamblin makes their chromatic black. And then right up against the that dark shadow, the forehead also is very dark and warm. And this will need a little bit of white in there to make it the right color. Just need to lighten it up a little bit. I think it's right. That's pretty close. Okay. And so then it's right against that lighter area. It does get a little bit lighter as it moves away from that. I guess it's the distance of the brim of the hat from the forehead. There's a little bit of room for light to bounce around in there. Okay, I'm doing a lot of squinting so I can kind of see where things are off. Okay, need some transition colors on the edge of that shadow. Okay, and I'm gonna redraw the eyebrow a little bit higher. Okay. Joyce says she's beautiful. Thank you. Got a little bit of dried paint skin there. I want to make sure I don't leave a whole lot of that. Kind of never like the way that looks left on the in the painting. And I want to, so there's a transition between that specular highlight in her cheek and then a little bit of area of pink right above that before you get to the lower eyelid. And I had that contrast much too high, so um, those transitions should be a little bit softer, trying to control those values a little bit better so that they don't feel like such hard steps. Really kind of very subtle changes in some parts, and those can be the hardest to really control, those color changes. But it's also important in building the values that you do have them, you do have enough control over them that they're kind of falling in the right range. So a nice light pink here in the side of the cheek, and again need to go a little bit lighter and a little bit cleaner there with the mixture. Then I'm just going to come in, mix in some pure white right into that to get it to be a little bit lighter. Let the alla prima part of the painting do its work. Okay, and here I can go a bit darker, right in this accent in the bottom of the cheek where it comes into the nose. I just have a little bit of area of the jawline that's poking out into the light a little bit more, and then I can adjust the values again down here. Oops, that was not where I wanted it to be, so I'm just scrubbing it back a little bit, and then the jawline starts to turn under right here. Make that a little bit sharper, that spot. Okay, her pupil, her iris feels just a little bit small, so I'm going to move the pupil up, make it a bit bigger. And then we have between the iris and the white of the eye, we have a little bit strong, sharper edge, and that's good to keep that edge sharp because we want that to be one of the focal points of the painting, and having that little bit sharper focus helps draw the eye to that spot. Okay, so doesn't feel like the bridge of her nose is quite in the right place at the moment. So have to do a little bit of adjusting there. You know, when you come in the beginning with such broad strokes, you do have to come back and adjust things for them to look right. It's not like you can just paint it all perfectly with the first strokes of the painting. Although the idea is to make it look like it was done that way. So it's some of the charm of alla prima painting is that if you do it right, you can hide a lot of the mistakes in the beginning and make it look like it was painted very quickly and correctly right from the beginning. Okay, get some of the values correct here and sharpen that corner of the eye a little. And she's missing an upper part of her eyelid. It's a lot of dark red, so that alizarin permanent with a little bit of black. Start to feel kind of the eye, the parts of the eye moving in and out in space, so that start to feel the anatomy of it. This part of the brow is moving into light. And I'm going to knock this light back a little bit so it feels a little more natural. And then part of what doesn't look right is I have the tip of her nose too broad. So I'm going to find where the outer edge of that nostril is. Something more like that. I may have to come back and adjust it a little bit more, but okay, so this corner of the nostril comes right up to about the middle of that white area, so that feels like it's in the right place now. Then I have to carve back a little this side, make it a little bit shorter this way. And then I really want to sharpen that crease there in the corner of in the side of her nose. It's maybe going a little bit too far, but we can always soften that up. Okay, and then her upper lip has a lot more pink in it and then gets darker as it gets towards the corner of her mouth. Here, let's kind of see things in different parts of the painting as I go, so I do jump around a little bit. Okay. Okay, so it's feeling a little bit choppy. The values really have to bring them under control so that I feel that areas are integrating into each other, so it feels like one continual um, form in some spots instead of just um, one area of value or color sitting against another. They really need to feel like they're part of the same whole. Okay, David is here with us. Welcome. What number round brush are you using? Good question. I've covered over the number with enough paint that I have no idea. But if I were to hazard a guess, I would say it was a 6 or an 8. It's not very fine. Sometimes I'll pull out a detail brush to get little details around the eyes or the nose. But generally, I try to use as big a brush as possible. It really does help keep the painting looking fresh. And then I try to get good at controlling those larger brushes because I really don't want to get into something that looks more like photorealism, like picking away at every little detail of the painting. I want more of a general description of what's going on so that if it's done well or right, it should read as a form that you can feel like you can touch the surface of. To do quite a bit of squinting here to make sure that I'm getting things to read the right way. Okay, need a little bit more darks coming into that shadow side there underneath her eye. Even darker. Okay, and get that eye shape in there. Okay, that's a little bit better, except for that errant brush mark that I need to clean up. Okay, that's feeling a little bit better. Her eye needs to feel like it's a little bit wider, open more, rather. Really need to get that corner of her eye feeling a little bit sharper. Okay, so we're kind of on our way here. We're about an hour in. Got a little bit of a late start, so let's just do a little bit of pure white right here on the glossiest part of her lip so that we really feel kind of that wet feeling. Let's go a little bit lighter on the lower lip. Okay, starting to feel that a little bit. Let's pull her cheek out a little bit further, which means we have to come out further too with the corner of their mouth. Okay, and there is just a little bit of shadow here underneath her lip. It's not very strong. Like I said, her the chin area underneath her lip is flattening out a little bit from her expression. So there's not going to be such a strong shadow there. And I'm going to soften up some of these transitions too here in a few places. That was the wrong color for the her nostril there. It's got a little bit of a light spot right here, and then it gets a bit darker. Trying to figure out that blue color on there's a light edge on the lower eyelid that comes right underneath her iris there. And I'm just changing the angle of the corner of her eye a little bit there. Okay, that's getting there. Okay, and need to have a little more light on her upper eyelid, especially towards the middle, so that we can feel that turn towards us. Okay, it's starting to take shape slowly. Those little touches sometimes is needed to get something to turn in space. It's amazing how just a small detail, a little shift in value or color can really make something turn in our brain. When we look at it, it can be very convincing and just have the minimal amount of detail that really accomplishes that. That's sort of what boggles my mind a lot of the time, and it's sort of something that's hard to do in paint unless you're really paying attention to those subtleties. Naturally we want to think when we see something that turns away from us in space and it changes value, we want to see those value changes as we imagine them as being much stronger than they actually are in many cases. We so easily see the strong light and darks of very sculptural chiaroscuro lighting, and it's much easier to paint from that because you can see how strong the change is from light to dark. But it's the more subtle lighting, softer lighting, that it's really hard to master those soft minor transitions, those really subtle transitions. So right in here where I need a transitional step in color and value, that has to be lighter and warmer. I say warmer, a little more orange. And it looks like I have quite a bit of cleaning up to do from my initial paint strokes until things start to really feel like they're where they need to be. It's okay. I've got nothing but time here. I see Doris, hello from Las Vegas. I love your paintings. I learned from you. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you're picking up something. I feel like I'm the one who's doing most of the learning during these things. Because each time I sit down to paint, I'm approaching it like it's a learning experience and that I'm trying to it out anew each time. And figure too, if I keep on thinking it that way, a lot, not that I already know all the answers, but I'm trying to figure it out each time, then I improve from that process. Let's go much darker and brighter here in this little area, triangle of shadow there. And then keep that edge soft. So I really want to feel that cheek turning there. Okay. But it is, I got a little bit too dark right in here. Okay, and I need that eyeliner here, underside. And I need that crease of her eyelid to go darker for all the values to make sense around it. That's sort of my darkest dark at the moment in that area of the painting. Okay, and let's improve the shape of the tip of her nose. It got a little out of control there. Gave her a Carl Malden nose there. She's not going to appreciate that probably if I leave it. And the shadow on the tip of her nose also has to change a little bit so I get that little bit of the ski slope turn of her nose. Okay, just adjusting some of those shadow shapes. Oops, I don't know how that white got in there. It's better. Okay. Okay. So I feel like I haven't made her smile quite bright, broad enough yet, or maybe it's just the shape of her cheek here. Yeah, it just feels like this has to come down a little bit lower, and then that shadow of her cheek there has to be a little more pronounced. I think that's a little better. Let's get, there's a little bit of a crease at the corner of her mouth that I'm missing. It's very subtle. Yes. And then the shape comes down a little bit faster. And then here's where we're missing some of that pull of her mouth there. Okay. So let me remeasure that eye. It does feel like it's creeping up too high. No. If anything, it's a little bit too low, but that's okay. It's not bothering me at the moment. The corner of this eye is closer to the nose. Yep. It comes up a little bit higher. There's a little bit of her eyelid is just a little bit lower there. Okay. And then if I would say there's white of the eye, it would be somewhere around there. Although I'm going to be mostly covered by hair, whatever that stuff's called. Mostly covered by stuff. Okay, and then I need this highlight in here. Let's get that little bit of orange on the underside here. If I do this right, you should feel the tip of the nose coming out of the painting. If I do it wrong, well, it'll just look like a colorful mess. Okay, I keep on making the tip of her nose too big, so one thing I have to pay attention to is to make sure that keeping that in check. Okay, and as the nose turns, it's often hard to see where the side of the nose is and where the cheek starts. And notice that with a lot of photographs, it's easy to see if you have a live model where those forms turn, but sometimes the photographs obliterate where those turns are and where the changes are, and you really have to study it for a while to start to see it, and then you need to exaggerate some of those things so that they do start to read correctly. And This is the case with this photograph. It's really hard to see it. Not going quite green enough with that eyebrow. Or maybe I'm just not going dark enough. Okay. And Doris is here. Hello from Las Vegas. I love your paintings. I learned from you. Or I already read that part. And she said, "Where do you get your models from? Is it people you know?" Well, some I get it from all over. There's an app called Sketchy where I've gotten a lot of my reference material from. If you have an iPhone, it's really a great tool, and it's sort of its own little community of artists and people who post their pictures who want to be drawn and painted. And lately, I've been looking on Pinterest. It's easy to find photos of models. And then I do a little bit of work asking the photographers if it's okay if I use the photographs. And in Instagram too, similar. This particular one, this is a commission. So I was given the photograph by the mother um, to paint the daughter. So this is a photo that the daughter had posted to Instagram, and then the mother had shared with me. So that's where I got this particular one from. Some of my demos have been of commissions that I'm working on, and some have just been ones that I've wanted to paint. Lately, I've been asking my followers on Instagram to choose from several photos. Just ask them which one they want to see me paint. It's a way of getting them engaged in the process too. Okay, slowly getting there with the nose, getting the right angles and such. I feel like that highlight is just a little bit too high. I can overdo it and then carve back a little. And I want to reiterate the shadow that's going over the bridge of the nose to help um, define the nose a little. I kind of feel like I still have her nose out a little bit too wide, so I'm just going to move it in subtly, carve into it from the other side. At some point, it would be helpful to step back a little bit and so that I can really see what I'm doing. Sometimes when I'm doing these demos, I get into my seat and then I don't move the whole time. And if I wasn't doing the demo, I would be standing up quite a bit more to take a look. Okay, starting to get the feeling of the upper lip, that turn in space. Let's get a little bit of that curl that's happening at on the upper part of the upper lip. It's just again, that tension from the pulling of the sides of the mouth is causing the upper part of her upper lip to curl just slightly, and that's you know we it's a little hard to describe, but we know it. We recognize that as sort of a natural um, pull of the lip. Then we got just a little bit in that upper lip. It's turning bulging out a little bit so it catches the light right at that spot. Yep. We can go a little bit thicker with the paint here to really bump up the value. Okay, and Doris says, "Oh, cool! I'll check it out. Thanks." Okay, next time I do a painting, I need to refresh my palette because I am working against it a little bit. Okay, need that little bit of highlight that's a little bit of light that's on the far nostril so I can see where it is. It's very subtle, more subtle than that. Okay, just a couple more things on the nose, and then I think I have to move on to other areas. Okay, I think I'm getting closer with that. Okay, so the next big thing is the hair. Let's see if we can get this moving along a little bit. At some point, I'm gonna put in indications of the straw of the hat, but I may leave that till um, after this session. Since this is commission, I am gonna continue to work on it afterwards, but I want the main part of the face to be part of the demo, getting that completed. And with that, the hair. So now I'm just sort of pushing and pulling the values in the hair a little bit. I get a little bit, some blues and the highlights there to get get the play of light into the color of her hair. Get some purples and yellows going. Let's finish off this hat a little bit lower. I want to get a sense of turn of the brim of the hat a little bit. let's get some of that going on the other side too. Okay, that just gets me a little bit of a start in the weave of the hat. So I'm really not going to get the feeling of light in that in those strands of hair unless I really get the dark that's around it. And I haven't really gone dark enough yet. But I will have to go lighter, almost pure white in spots. Something like that. Again, missing some of the darks. Okay, and Eularia Art. Hello, all. Hello, and welcome. Okay, so I'm starting to pull out some of those strands of hair and some of the darks that are in and around it so that we're starting to feel feel the hair. It's actually painted that strand a little bit too far over. And no one knows, no one's going to know that it's not in the right place, but it's helping me. If it's in the right place, it helps me build the rest of the hair because I can use it as a reference. That's a little bit darker than I want to go, but it's easier to pull it lighter than it is to go darker. just really focused on getting some of the shadows dark enough and getting the right color in there. There's kind of this transitional color where you see the lighter strands of hair go into the shadow. Kind of turns like a little orange before it gets there. Then it really has to then go into black. Okay, I'm going to give her a little bit more upper part of the hat. A little bit of transition where it sort of starts to get lost into the light. And we're about an hour and a half in now. Made good progress. I'm going to do as much as I can tonight for you guys, although I probably won't finish the painting tonight. Still will have a bit of work to do on it. Let's make her chin a little bit softer. Not quite as strong as I had made it. Then the shadow has to come down a little bit lower. Let's get some transitional colors here. Use our medium to make it a little more flowing. Okay, something closer to that, although it comes up a little bit higher here on this edge. Okay, that's looking good. That was too gray for that spot. Let's get a little more color in it. That's better. Okay, now I can just sit back and look and start to compare some things so I can make some of the finer adjustments I need for the likeness. to see some little areas like in the cheek that need to be pulled one way or another. Okay, I'm going to move that that strand of hair down that I had painted before. I'm just going to paint it out because I don't like the spot that it's at. But of course, with oil paints, you have a lot of flexibility. You can move things around very easily. So that strand, I want it to come in around here and then down there. Okay. And I want to go a little bit darker with that light in the eye. Then have it transition smoothly to the corner. You don't really see it so much in the photo, but I want to make sure it feels like it's part of the white of the eye in there. And the same with the other side. And then I'm going to throw in a little bit of color that we don't see in the photograph in the lower part of the eye. Just lighten it up a little bit so we can feel the light coming through into the eye. Okay, that's feeling a little better. So I was asked a couple questions um, that people wanted me to talk about in this. One was to describe my mediums a little bit, and so I did do that quickly, but just again to reiterate, I use Gamsol to thin the paint, and I use a little bit of safflower oil to get it to flow a little bit better. Sometimes when you get too thin, then it's not really um, keeping the paint together. There's not enough binder, and so it will start to get a little dry. Not dry per se, but thin and chalky as it dries. And then, um, and then someone asked me to talk a little bit about my color mixing. And I think I've watched a lot of artists talk about very deliberately their color theory, how they do these like warm against cool, and they're very deliberate about how they mix the color. And I'm more looking to try to match colors that I see in my reference, and I'm not so occupied with how I'm getting to that color. I mean, I just know I'm looking at a pool of color and I needed to go lighter or shift to one hue or another, and so I'm just adding in directly some of those colors. Or I know that there's a patch of color in the painting and the color needs to mix, the color I'm putting on top needs to mix with the color underneath, and so I'm just changing that color a little bit by adding whatever color it needs to it. I don't know if that makes much sense. Um, but color theory, understanding color theory does help a lot because you know generally what colors you're going for in the light or the dark. you know a lot more about how to mix colors to get to the color that you want. Right now, you don't really see it, but in the shadow, the darkest dark is going to be where the brim of the hat meets the head right here. And so I want to push that just a little bit darker if I can than the darks around it. So you really feel that moving back into space, and that there's like maybe little wisps of hair that come out from that. So you just feel it a little bit more. Let's see if I can get this one strand of hair that's coming up here that's moving into the face a little bit. It's almost like it's blowing in backwards from the other hair. And in some areas where I know I need to go darker, I'm just like putting in some almost pure black paint and letting it mix with the paint that's already down there. I'm just that way I'm moving it in the direction that I want. Okay, I'm going to move the dark area of the hat even further out here. Let's get some of the wall color here too, back here. Okay, so I'm probably going to try to go to about 11:30 for another half hour or so um, before I end this session for tonight. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to finish it. I just have too many areas that I want to work on, but that's fine. We'll get close to a finish here. I'll post this to my YouTube channel when it's all done. People can watch it. And then when I'm finished, I will post that finish to Instagram for my Instagram followers. Speaking of Instagram, during last summer, I noticed that a lot of my paintings weren't showing up in the hashtags that I had chosen to put in the description. And I didn't know why. And it took a little bit of investigative work, but I figured out in the end that it was where I had close up of people's faces, the Instagram screen, I guess it's really Facebook screen, was deciding that it probably was pornographic. Just I'd show a close up of someone's face or lips, and so I was getting censored from the hashtags. And I wrote to Instagram, and eventually it seemed to either work itself out or they changed something. I I doubt that they're actually paying attention to some of these posts that I leave saying that there's a problem, even though it makes you seem so. But it gives you an answer like, "Thank you for telling us that. We will use that information to improve our site or service or something like that." So it makes it seem like you shouldn't expect a staff member to read it and make any change specifically to your account. But anyway, eventually it did work itself out. Well, lately I had a post that got lots of follows, not lots of follows, it got lots of likes and lots of comments, but I noticed that it wasn't getting any real follows like I usually get with some posts that get a lot of likes. And so I ran my hashtag test again, and again this one was being banned. from hashtags. So sorry about that. My phone completely died, and it may die again, but I got cut off there, and I think I'm the only one on. So um, I'm gonna see. I'm gonna paint as long as the phone keeps on recharging. Otherwise, that will be the end of the session. So we'll see how it does. It's the phone's at 2%. It could completely run out again, or um, it can start to recharge. In which case, I'll paint a little bit longer. So we'll see. We'll see how we do. Um, really would like to get a little bit further along in this before I call it a night. I do still have a couple people that are here, so good. Really sorry about that. My technical troubles. I thought when I bought a new battery that for this phone that it would have taken care of that, but I think that there's some problem with my cable setup too. I have a little converter that allows me to plug the microphone and the charger into the lightning port of my phone, and apparently can't always see when it's charging and not charging. But like right now, I can't actually see the level of charge. So actually, if I flip off for a second, so I don't. So, so I'm going to keep on going as long as I can, like I said. So it looks like it's holding up so far. Which is good. Need to give her a little bit more chin here. And then I think I made the side of her face come out a little bit too far. So I'll just have to get a little more darker reds in here in her cheek to let us know that that's turning back away from us. Even though we really can't see it that well with all the hair. Need to soften up this shadow a little bit. Picking up little bits of color here as I'm sorry. I've had to disconnect my microphone here watching, but that's okay. I am just going to paint a little bit longer so that I'm a little closer to a finish. And maybe there's a few people that are still here that just decided to wait to see what happened. But yeah, my phone ran out of charge again. I think it's my adapter that I use to hook in my microphone. I don't know if you really can hear me or not. I'm trying to talk a little bit louder so that the phone's built-in microphone can hear me. And so I've just kept on painting a little bit while I was waiting for the phone to recharge. Just refining some areas a little bit. And probably doesn't help that I have the phone's microphone turned away from me, but hopefully it will start to charge again, and then I can just finish this, get a little bit further in this video. Using a little bit smaller brush, I'm trying to smooth out, again, some of these transitions that need to be a little bit softer so that the areas of flesh start to pull together a little bit more. That you can start to feel the direction of the forms just a little bit. Don't want to make it too soft though, and I want to keep a lot of the fresh brush work there. So trying to move in kind of at least longer strokes. Just really looking back and forth between the painting and the reference to make sure that I'm getting the right expression and feeling and features that I see there.